Hi, everyone. My name is Jordan. Thank you so much for being here in person, and we have a virtual audience, so thank you very much to our online audience as well. Thank you so much for joining the Ambassadors for Change for a night of drinks, storytelling, and exploring the idea of art as an act of resilience, resistance, and healing. So thank you all very much. If you are tuning in virtually, Sabrina, another one of our Ambassadors for Change, is in the Zoom room with you. So feel free to reach out to her in the chat if you have any questions or need anything at all. Before I talk about the event, I do want to acknowledge that the Holocaust Center is on the land of the Coast Salish peoples who have resided and stored on these lands since time immemorial. This event is being hosted by the Ambassadors for Change, or AFC. We're a group of folks in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who are organizing to raise awareness for the Holocaust Center, inspire change in our community, and help build personal and professional networks through mission-based social and educational opportunities. Every year, this fundraiser, this is our third annual Sip and Learn fundraiser, raises money to support the educational work of the Holocaust Center for Humanity. If it's your first time joining us, the Holocaust Center is a museum, library, and educational resource here in Seattle that's serving the entire state of Washington and beyond. Their mission is to teach the lessons of the Holocaust, inspiring students of all ages to confront bigotry and indifference, promote human dignity, and take action. This year, AFC members also selected 2 additional organizations who share our values, Wanawari and the Kavod Chef Initiative, who will each receive a portion of the funds raised tonight. Wanawari is an immersive community arts project based in a historic home in the Central District in Seattle. They build on a legacy of Black resilience and self-determination, center Black creativity through free art exhibits, film screenings, performances, workshops, and organize Black-led arts-based solutions for displacement and economic vulnerability, and build meaningful economic pathways for Black artists and homeowners. And the Kavod Chef Initiative provides Holocaust survivors with critical emergency services such as dental, vision, medical, food, transportation, COVID relief, and home care. So we're really excited to be partnering with both of these organizations. I also want to say thank you to all of our sponsors. Our community really came together to make this event happen, to donate funds not only for the Holocaust Center and our partner organizations, but also to provide some fantastic prizes for you to potentially win in our raffle, as well as some of the beverages that we've been enjoying here tonight. So every $5 that you donate before and during the fundraiser equals 1 raffle ticket, and winners will be announced at 8:30. You do not need to be present to win, so if you are no longer tuning in online or in person, we will email you. And at any time during the program today, you can make a donation by texting SIP LEARN, all one word, to 41444. We're going to put that in the chat as well for those of you on Zoom. And if you do donate that way, that does count toward the raffle. So feel free to donate during the event. All right. So now with our opening remarks concluded, I'd like to introduce our speaker. One of our very own Ambassadors for Change, Ellie Greenberg, will be our first speaker tonight. Ellie is a Master of Social Work graduate student at the University of Washington. Ellie has worked as a domestic violence and sexual assault advocate and is interested in violence prevention and education. Ellie also guides mindful wilderness trips for youth that foster self-discovery and healing. Having run track and played soccer both at Middlebury College and professionally in Tel Aviv, Ellie is especially passionate about using athletics to help empower young girls. Ellie also loves to surf, snowboard, camp, watch the Philadelphia Eagles, and read fiction. Come on up, Ellie. Thank you.
Thank you for welcoming me. I'm honored to be with all of you here in Seattle and virtually to speak about my grandfather, Joseph Greenglass, his experience surviving the Holocaust, and his connection to art. I joined Ambassadors for Change in January, 3 months after my grandfather passed away at age 96. I was struggling with all the personal aspects of grieving, frustration at not being able to call him, sadness of recognizing he will not paint any more paintings to line our walls, having a difficult time knowing he and I will not share any more dances in the kitchen, and a general sadness that a kind, caring, loving man who has been present for my whole life was now gone. On top of this, losing Pop-Up felt historic, monumental. and it was. New to Seattle, I joined AFC in search of a community that also recognized the significance of losing a survivor and was actively working to honor their memories and teach their stories. I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity tonight to speak with all of you about my family's story. In 2005, we traveled back to Europe with my grandparents. While I was only 7 years old, I strongly remembered the weight this trip held for my grandfather, as he educated us about the horrors he survived in the very places it happened. My sister Sarah created a short documentary with footage from this trip. This movie will paint a clear picture of Pop-Up's voice and story, which I believe will be helpful before I speak about his connection to art. The film is named B2247, after the number tattooed on my grandfather's arm in Auschwitz. Here it is.
A family's history will echo from generation to generation as stories from the past are retold. My grandparents are survivors of the Holocaust. Here is their story, a story of bravery and resilience and the obligation to remember. As a young child, I had always noticed the number on my grandfather's arm. What did it mean? Why didn't all grandfathers have a number? What made my grandfather different? Only when my grandparents were interviewed as part of the Steven Spielberg Shoah Project in 1996 would I find out. I was 8.
It's a special day for me to be with my family together and this holiday of Passover. And another occasion is it, I was liberated in April 11th, the same month. It's a big occasion for me to see my daughter, my son-in-law, and future daughter-in-law, and my wife.
I don't remember ever not knowing about the Holocaust. It seems like I was very little when I was informed about it. And now I see that my children are getting to an age to, at least one of them, to be able to appreciate what her grandparents went through. And today she had a special meeting with her grandfather where they shared a book and she's beginning to learn. And she would like to just say a word about how wonderful that was.
Well, today, me and my grandfather read a book. It's called The Number on My Grandfather's Arm by David Adler. And it's about the Holocaust. And it's a grandfather telling his granddaughter about the Holocaust. And the grandfather in this story went to the same concentration camp as my grandfather. So I understand a lot more. And it was special to read it.
For me, this day marked only the beginning of a long journey toward understanding. Over the course of many years, I would ask many questions. Although heart-wrenching and painful, my grandfather always took the time to answer my questions and explain his unfathomable past. It was important to him that I understand and that I learn from his story. But as much as I tried to understand, I often felt lost. I knew where my grandparents came from. I knew about what they had suffered, but everything seemed so far away, so distant, so difficult to relate to. In July 2005, my family took a trip with my grandparents to their hometowns in Eastern Europe. We started our trip in the mountains of Slovakia, visiting the town, Porobka, where my grandmother as a young child was hidden during the war. We returned to Porobka in search of the family who had hidden my grandmother and to find the tombstone of my grandmother's mother, who had died while in hiding just before the war's end.
She remembers when I was little.
She remembers you?
Yes. Yeah. She remembers my mother.
Yeah.
Does she remember which house, family you were with? Which house I was in? Which family? Hello. So Matthew explained to her?
Yeah.
Relika?
Yes.
Relika. She said she remembered.
She's same. She's the same as when she's same.
She said
She
she
was-
looks the same or?
Yeah.
That I have to change.
The stories of my grandmother's years in hiding no longer relied on torn photographs of lost ancestors. They were becoming tangible, real.
Shalom Aleinu, Yaakov Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu, Yaakov Yisrael.
We then traveled to Poland to visit the town, Ostrowiec, where my grandfather was born. While 20,000 Jews had lived in Ostrowiec before the war, not one remained.
I remember when the war started, and a few weeks later, when the Germans came in, and I didn't know it was Germans because England and France supposed to help Poland against the Germans. So marching in soldiers. So I went to the other side of the street, and where they're marching through the soldiers, I saw the swastikas, and you read exactly that they're Germans. So at that time, it started feeling that something really close is coming to us. Something very bad is going to come.
The Nazis murdered both of my grandfather's parents and 4 of his siblings. Only my grandfather and 1 brother survived by avoiding the initial liquidation of their town, working as slave laborers in a nearby work camp, Bliegen. We visited this work camp where my grandfather spent grueling months before being transported to Auschwitz. Slowly, the stories were coming to life. But it was not until our last stop, Birkenau, Auschwitz, the death camp where my grandfather had been a prisoner a mere 60 years prior, that I began to fully grasp the enormity and horror of my grandparents' past.
The trains coming into this hall. I think I went straight through, and there was built high podiums. So the SS was standing, so they can see everything was going on. Some prisoners with uniform came and opened up, and we got out. They told us right away what's going on. We saw what happened. At night, we saw 4 crematoriums, and the sky was all red from burning smoke coming out of the chimneys. That was number that toured in Birkenau, Auschwitz. Those are the people they were leave for war, and other people which went to gas chambers with no numbers given at all. And my number is P2247. In the quarantine, we cleared out the sickness what I have on my skin. They brought us here in, and that was the
What is this?
barracks. They kept us
D-Lager.
No.
Gulag. It was named Gulag.
Gulag. How many people slept in?
Oh, they were very close. Everybody was like being a carry.
4 in a bed.
Or more than 4. We were laying on the barracks, and some at night they came in with this has a flashlight, and they took people down to send the crematorium. So next to me was laying a boy. I look around, he was gone. So unbelievable. He didn't pick me, he picked him. So then who's taking care of me, to stay alive a little bit more, a little bit more. And Krematorium is all ruined because the Germans, when they fled, they bombed, they exploded everything. But you still know exactly where they took the people in the crematorium, then they put them in the ovens. As I told you before, at night in Birkenau was sky red from burning. This never got out of me. The hate comes into people like a sickness. They think other people shouldn't live and they should live. And if we allow this to happen, it's still going on even now after 50 years. We still see what's going on in the world. Still coming out of sick people that want to hate, want to destroy, want to kill. It's unbelievable. People don't learn nothing, listen. But hopefully the majority will learn. We should never let this happen again. So my future children, grandchildren should survive and never go through what I went through. Good morning, generals, soldiers, friends and family. It's difficult to be here in Auschwitz, a place where I witnessed such death and destruction. But it's an honor to be here with you, the Israel Defense Forces. Today in Auschwitz, I know I have regained dignity. If Jewish state and IDF had existed in the late 1930s, the fate of millions of Jews could have been different. Now, we have a Jewish state and a homeland of the Jewish people. And for this, I say, thank you, Toda Rabah. Am Yisrael Chai.
I have heard and told my grandfather's story numerous times. I have vowed to never forget his story. But watching my grandfather address a group of Israeli soldiers, his heroes, in a place where over 1 million Jews were annihilated, his story suddenly took on a new meaning. As the last living link to survivors of Auschwitz and the Holocaust, it is my generation's responsibility to tell the story of our grandparents. No other generation can ever touch a forearm branded with a numbered tattoo. No other generation can ever walk through the barracks of Auschwitz, personally accompanied by stories of what it felt like, what it smelled like. We, the third generation, have the obligation to transmit our grandparents' stories to the world and to future generations. May we never forget.
Thank you all for watching that. I actually I've seen that movie so many times throughout my life, and I haven't seen it since my grandfather passed. So it was, yeah. Thank you for watching. As you can see, I am very lucky to have a man like Pop as my grandfather. There are many things I want to share with you about him. Although small in stature, he was a giant. As you just watched, he was the only one of 2 siblings of a large extended family in Poland that survived the Holocaust. He was a survivor of Auschwitz and 2 other horrific camps. But tonight in my talk, I'll not recount the details of the story of his survival you saw in the film. Instead, tonight I'll focus on his passion, his art. It's unclear if Pop painted in Europe. I called my grandfather Pop. There is a photograph of him painting in Detroit, where he lived in 1951 after the war. But my mom and uncle never remember Pop as an artist during their childhood. They remember him working really hard as a TV repairman with limited free time. Only after he retired did Pop return to the hobby, when he enrolled in art classes at a local community center. My uncle told me that Pop was a lifelong learner, never too proud to admit he was a beginner, and loved finding new ways to step outside himself and observe the world around him. Pop understood it was never too late to learn or try something new. At age 93, he debuted as an artist at Haverford College, showing all of his works in a gallery. A lot of the works you can see portrayed behind me. My grandmother mentioned that this moment, his art debut, was one of Pop's happiest and proudest. In reflecting on his life, it is difficult to not think about the horror and evil that my grandfather endured. My grandmother spoke about some of their friends who were also survivors and also artists. She said their works were often dark, serious, and harrowing. But as you see here behind me, the distinctive element of all of my grandfather's painting is color and light. I instantly knew Pop was painting when I walked into his apartment and heard music, always classical, blaring. I would find him humming along, mixing his colorful paints. I believe Pop's use of color is indicative of his spirit. He approached the world with heart and with kindness. His survival alone was an act of resistance, but he went further. He not only survived, he danced at weddings, in his kitchen, it didn't matter. He celebrated holidays with joy, always the loudest singer at the table. He shared his love of playing soccer with me as a young girl, and later watched every single one of my games. He filled his world with plants, caring for flowers, and surrounding himself with life. He cranked up the music, and his paintings exploded with color and light. He would not let the darkness of his past consume him. Despite the horrors of the Holocaust, losing his family, needing to move to a strange country, learn a new language, and start a life, he not only looked for the light, he created it. Survivors, and especially my grandparents, embody resilience. I witnessed my grandfather's resilience firsthand when he fell at age 89 and hurt his spine. I watched as he held onto the bar and learned to walk again. And I watched in awe as he found movement in his arms through his love of painting. His spirit returned with every painting he made in rehab, his resilience shining through. For my grandfather, family was everything. He would stand around and beam every time we all gathered for holidays. He made each of his 5 grandchildren a painting that was specific to us. For my cousin Milo, it was Yankee Stadium. For me, it was a portrait of me playing the violin. For Pop, building this family and sharing art with us was a great joy. My grandmother also shared with me how art was healing for Pop. She said it was his therapy. He would put on his music, often to a volume that upset his neighbors, and get lost in the process of creating for hours. He would try to give this feeling to his grandkids, setting up a painting class for my cousins and me. We would paint boats and lemons, whatever, as long as it had color. Pop always shared his stories of the Holocaust with us, with students, with anyone. He wanted to ensure that others lived with awareness and would be armed with the truth. It was important to him that these stories would be shared and remembered. I want to deeply thank you for giving me the opportunity to share tonight about my grandfather. not only the important and horrific stories of his past, but also about who he was and the role art played in his life. It is my hope that you will take these stories, my grandfather's stories, and educate others about his survival and his resilience. And tonight you can start by making sure that your art has plenty of color in it. Thank you. And I think I'm to remain up here for any questions. Yeah, here.
Where was he when like when he was liberated? Was he in the camps or was he like where was he?
I'm nervous to answer because my entire family is online watching and I know that they will fact check me. Okay. He was in a labor camp when he was liberated. And then after the war, he returned to Poland to see if any of his family had survived. And from there was in a deportation camp in Germany before he immigrated to the US. Mom and Dad, how to do? My grandmother also is watching in Philadelphia, so round of applause for her. Yeah. Yes.
So I'm wondering about the history of how your grandfather got into painting. When did he start? And I mean, you can kind of see various styles, but do you have more to say about how he was influenced and by whom?
Yeah, definitely. So it's unclear if he was ever painting in Europe. And then I mentioned when he was in Detroit in 1951, right after the war, we have a photograph of him painting. And that's the first in our family known time that he was really committed to painting. And then it wasn't till after he retired, he started taking classes at JCCs, learning more about different forms of art and different techniques. And then my grandmother on my father's side was an artist, and I think she had a strong influence in him connecting with this form of art as well. Yes.
Have a comment from the chat from Milo Gringlass, who says, "Amazing, Ellie, so proud of you."
Thank you. That's my cousin who Pop-Up made the Yankee Stadium painting for. Thanks, Milo.
Do you know what his favorite painting was? Is it one of those, or can you describe it?
I don't know if he had a favorite. I know that whenever he'd walk into our home, he would point to all the art of his hanging on the wall. And there's stories of him coming around like, oh, why isn't my painting hanging over here? So I don't know if he had a favorite painting of his, but he was very, very proud when we would display them. Yes. Oh, do I have a favorite? I do actually. I have one that I traveled out to Seattle with, and it is of a skier, which is quite different from all the other paintings that he's done. And it was painted the year I was born, a few months before I was born, and I love being in the mountains and being in the snow, so I feel really connected to that painting.
Did either of your grandparents change their names throughout their lives as they moved from country to country?
Again, the family history gonna be fact checked. But I believe my grandfather's in Poland last name was Greenglass. And then my grandmother's, who you saw a bit of her story, is Keisler. First names, yes. Joseph. They met in Detroit. There are a lot of survivors that were living in Detroit after the war. They had quite an age difference, 13 years between them. And yeah, they met right as my grandmother was graduating high school, and they went on a few dates and fell in love.
I'm curious what you know about your grandfather's story of immigration and his journey to the United States and what that was like for him. And even within the United States, it sounds like he might have moved a couple times. So
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So I mentioned that he was in a displaced persons camp after the war in Germany, and he was there with his brother, my great uncle Saul, who they were the only two survivors from their family. And my grandfather was volunteering while he was at that displaced persons camp, and because of that, he was put on a list of survivors that were able to immigrate to Israel. And as you could see from the film, Israel like holds a very special place for my grandfather. And it was his dream to go there. But his one surviving brother was not on the list and was instead intended for the US. And he decided that to be with family was the most important. So together they both immigrated to Detroit. But as you can see, Israel was always a very special place in his heart. Yes, from the chat.
Just some mazel tovs. From Winnie, mazel tov, Ellie, great presentation. Andy and Susan say, Ellie, you are wonderful. We love our pop painting. And from Ellen, Ellie, that was a beautiful tribute to your grandparents.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, he was yes, the question was Pop-Up's connection to music. And he was always a lover of music. His family in Poland had some musicians in it. I don't know if he ever played instruments, but it was definitely something that was really important to him and he valued and always had surrounding him. And my brother actually definitely inherited that music gene and wrote the music for my sister's film. So he scored it as well. So definitely love, big value of music in the family, but I don't have any memories of Pop-Up himself other than lots of singing. Yeah. Yeah, so the question was Pop-Up's connection to soccer and then to my connection to soccer. So Pop-Up would always talk about growing up in the schoolyards in Poland before the war playing soccer. And he talked about how he was a forward and would score the goals. And we were like, okay, all right, Pop-Up. And then he must have been in his 60s or 70s and he was playing. My sister was learning how to play soccer and he was out there in the yard with my dad and he took a shot and it was like upper left corner, perfect shot. And he really was a talented soccer player. And yeah, he definitely inspired a love in soccer in me and would watch all my games and call me afterwards and chat with me about them. So definitely a lot of truth behind him playing in the schoolyard in Poland. All right, thank you everyone so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Ellie. And thank you to Ellie's friends and family tuning in as well in the chat. Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your grandfather's story with us. Now I'm excited to introduce our next speaker facilitator of the evening, Annika Tabachnik. Annika is our special guest who will be guiding us all through a creative activity together. Annika is a Seattle-based museum educator passionate about the power of art to express, empower, and build community. Their belief in the potential of cultural institutions to inspire curiosity, compassion, and connection has led them to their current role as the Creative Aging Programs Associate at the Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, and their work as an arts educator and consultant for cultural organizations across the state. So Annika, please come on up.
Hi, everyone. It is an honor to be here today with all of you and facilitate a bit of a creative project, sort of building on some of the ideas of lifelong learning, hope, and finding joy in everyday experiences and beauty in the world and all. Here's an example that I made in preparation of the collages that we're going to be making today. You'll see these two tables behind you have a ton of fun collage materials. They also have wax pastels, and you'll see a little template piece of watercolor paper that has been pre-painted because we really want to make sure that we get the color in there. And so I'd invite you, once we get up, to sort of see which piece of paper, like what color calls to you, what inspires you to get creative, and to head to that. And just for a little overview of the instructions, and this will stay up so that you can reference it as we go. And I'll also just sort of be hovering if you just need some inspiration or help, but there's a ton of supplies on the table for the people at home. Any sort of collage stuff, glue, scissors, pencil, you'll be good. You'll see on these pieces of paper that they're separated into 3 sections with some little pencil lines. The idea is that those sections represent the past, the present, and the future. So as you're thinking and building your collage, you can start by thinking about the past. For me, when talking with Ellie and hearing her grandfather's story, it made me reflect a lot about the stories that my grandparents and relatives have told me, and what I want to keep reminding myself to bring into the world with me, as I move forward, and what has sort of shaped my understanding of who I am, and those values that I hold. And I think that, that's always a nice thing to reflect on. The middle section will be the present, reflecting on where you are now. Think about how you might want to represent that. If you look at my example back here, I sort of thought a little bit about physical location, about what is important to me, what I'm sort of feeling passionate about right now. And then the last section will be the future. So where do you see yourself in the future? What are your hopes for yourself, for others, for the world? And sort of what you hope is carried forward into the future for future generations. So with that, I think everyone can sort of make their way, find the materials, and we'll be here to guide you along. And for those in the chat and Zoom, you're also welcome to get started with that, and you'll have company.
And for the virtual audience, if you have any questions for Annika, shoot them in the chat and we will pass them along and get some assistance for you if you need it.
Okay, thank you for joining us again. I know it's hard to stop the creative process, but I promise it's going to be worth it. Before we announce tonight's raffle winners, I want to say thank you to the generous donors that made this event happen. Convergence Zone Cellars and Perihelion Brewery, who donated the drinks we're enjoying today. Seattle Recreative, who donated the collagen material we sent to the people at home. Blick Art Material, Queen Anne Book Co., Altana Bagels, Georgetown Brewing Co., and Tito's Homemade Vodka for donating fun swag for our raffle prizes that some of you may win. And Amazon for supporting the event as a visionary sponsor. If I announce your name as a raffle winner and you're here, please come over and get your prize. If you're winning and you're not here, we'll send you an email afterwards and get the gift sent to you. So I hope everyone's ready. The first winner of a $200 voucher for Blick Art Materials is Denny Touchman. Denny, is Denny here? Congratulations. The winner of the $100 Eltana Bagels gift card is Pat Valerio. Is Pat here? Congratulations. The winner of the $50 Georgetown Brewing Co. gift card and Tito's Vodka swag is Tom Creed. Is Tom here? Tom's virtual, so you will get an email afterwards. And finally, the last winner, the winner of a selection of books from Queen Anne Book Co. is Adrian Ruiz. Congratulations to all the raffle winners.
All righty. Congrats to all of our raffle winners. You can keep crafting, but we just want to make sure to thank you all so much for coming out tonight in person and online and donating your time and money. Thank you so much to our fantastic partner organizations, our sponsors, to Sabrina, Ellie, Annika, and Tal for hosting with me, Devonshire, and all of the Holocaust Center for Humanities staff. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our AFC members, Moriel, Kenzie, Isabel, Julia, and Melody. Thank you all for making this event happen. This has been great. I just got the official number of money that we've raised through this event. We raised over $8,000 for the Holocaust Center and our partner organization. So that's $8,148 that will go to the Holocaust Center, and then our partners, the Kavod Chef Initiative and Wanawari. So that's wonderful. Thank you all so much. Please share your finished artwork with us by posting it on social media. You can tag the center at HCH Seattle. And if you had a good time tonight, keep an eye on your email for emails for future Holocaust Center and AFC events. If you're interested in being an ambassador, we'd love to have you. We'll have a recruiting event in the fall, and then the applications will be open November through January to start next January. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you all so much for sharing your evening with us.
And if you all are really engrossed in your art making, the doors will close 10 till 9. So you have a little bit of time if you would like to finish your artwork, have your final drink, and enjoy yourselves. Thanks so much.